Welcome to Valiant Rabbit Workshop. Let's make something. In today's video, we're going to make some concrete spheres. Let's take a look at the supplies. I picked up a bag of this Quikrete concrete mix. It's really cool because all you have to do is add water. I also picked up the same brand dye. Next here I'm showing you guys, obviously you need a form to pour the concrete into. So these are just little clear ornaments that I bought from the Dollar Tree. It worked out really well. Since they are hard plastic, you can pour the concrete into them and not worry about them losing their form. And they were also quite cheap. If you're enjoying the video so far, be sure to hit that like and subscribe button. It really does help me out. I also picked up these toy balls you see in the box here. There's sand in there, and I'll explain why I use the sand later. Picked up a funnel, and it's also a good idea to get some plastic sheeting because concrete can get quite messy. This was my first time making anything out of concrete, and I did make quite a mess on my first attempt. I also ended up mixing it by hand on my first attempt, so it's a good idea to wear gloves. Then you just gotta pour your water and you're ready to go. So here I'm cutting the hole in the toy balls to pour the concrete into. You can see as soon as I cut them, they very easily lose their form, which became quite a problem when I started pouring. And you can see here I blow into it to kind of give it its spherical shape back. But they are quite flimsy, so it wasn't my favorite thing to work with. So here we go. I start mixing the concrete with water. I don't have any specific measurement. This was my first time doing it. Most people say you want to kind of mix to an oatmeal consistency. So I would think it's a good idea to mix gradually until you kind of reach that consistency. It worked out for the most part, I think. So here you see me pouring into the form. The main issue I had with these balls is they were so flimsy that if any droplet hit outside of the hole, the entire body of the ball would kind of collapse on itself. Kind of see me, I kind of have to keep sticking my hand in there and picking it back up. And the forms, well, they didn't turn out perfectly spherical, but they kind of worked out. So here you see me making the small spheres. The goal was to make large and small spheres so we can kind of use them for decor in our house and maybe in the yard. You can see I'm pouring into the funnel, into the ornament. These were a lot easier, obviously, because the form does not collapse on itself. It actually holds its shape quite well. I've seen quite a few people online use glass forms to pour into and then break them when the concrete dries. I really didn't want to deal with a bunch of broken glass in my garage, but if you have any ideas of how to do this maybe a better way, leave them in the comments down below. I appreciate any advice. So now the goal was to get the dry concrete out of the form. I let it dry for probably 2 days. So what I'm trying to do here is just kind of cut a slit on the top of the ornament so then I can stick a chisel in there and pull the top off. Obviously the further I got, or the more I did, the easier it got because I kind of got the technique down. This ended up being really the technique that worked. You cut a little slit and then you use your pliers and roll back onto the plastic so you don't dent the concrete under it. What was really cool about these plastic ornaments is that since the form was so smooth, the concrete spheres actually came out, at least on the top half, with a bit of luster on it. You'll see here when I pull it out, it does shine and reflect quite nicely. Now that does die down a little bit as the concrete continues to cure, and it also gets a little lighter. Now back to the bandsaw. I know some of you might be worried about me destroying the blade or whatever, or the bandsaw, but this bandsaw is actually pretty cheap and doesn't work very well, so don't worry about it. So the last thing I do after chomping off the excess on the back is use a little sanding disc to kind of get rid of a little nib that was on the top. 100 grit to kind of remove it down, and then 600 to smooth it over a bit. You'll see here when I put it down, the other spheres from the toys came out kind of wobbly, but They might be good for the yard, I think. So here I'm taking a second attempt at making large spheres. I went out and bought a couple more supplies to help. Lessons you learned from the first attempt. I got a plastic cup. Before I had used a styrofoam cup that kind of fell apart the more I poured. I also got this drill bit for mixing to get a better mix, a smoother mix with the concrete. And then I ended up buying these little basketballs for the form. I knew they would still be easy to peel, but they would hold their form a lot better when pouring the concrete. So you'll see me here pumping it up and getting it ready to go. I found that if you leave them inflated for a couple of days, they will actually hold their shape better than if you inflate them and cut the hole in them right away to pour. So it can be a long process, but a little patience can go a long way with the results. So let's pour some concrete. So here you see me cutting the hole. This is a ball I actually left inflated for almost a week before I actually poured, and you'll see it holds its shape quite nicely and stays smooth. The idea of the sand is you pour it into your container so it goes halfway up the sphere and helps hold the bottom of the shape. Although I would say the basketball probably didn't need it that high, and I actually didn't do it. So here you see me pouring the dye in. They recommend that you mix the dye in with water before you pour it into your concrete. If you're interested in making your own concrete decor, be sure to check out the description of the video. You'll find links to all the materials I used for this project. So if you've made it this far into the video, first, I just want to say thanks. I do appreciate you taking the time to watch my process. And also, hit that like and subscribe button. Really, my goal with this channel is to explore creativity, covering a bunch of different subjects and mediums, so I do hope you stay tuned. So as I'm mixing here, you can see the concrete is quite lumpy and sandy. And this is what I mean. You gradually kind of mix things in and see where you're at and get to where you're going. So as I pour here, obviously the goal is to not collapse the form, which it doesn't. As you see, droplets are falling in. All I have to do is kind of scoot them into the hole. And as the concrete begins to rise up and get near the top, I give the ball a little shake to let the air out from the bottom, and you'll see the concrete just drops a little bit further in. So I let this dry for about 2 or 3 days before I came with the box cutter and just started peeling away at the basketball to reveal our concrete sphere inside. So you can see here the sphere really retained its shape. There were a couple grooves that were created by the inside of the basketball, but they were symmetrical, so I think it looks kind of cool, and you also get this really cool texture. So depending on what you use for your form, you might get a bunch of different results. And here are the small spheres. We're using them as decor for our fireplace. I do have to warn, do not put these in your fireplace when the fireplace is going, because the concrete balls could explode. So we are not planning to turn on our fireplace. And if we do, we would remove the spheres from inside. I really hope you enjoyed the video. Please like and subscribe and come back soon.